Deep in southeastern Iran, there is a desert where the ground can grow hot enough to burn skin. No river, no trees, no softness, just heat, stone, silence. And yet, in the same country, there are forests so old and so dense they feel untouched by time. One country, two worlds, and what exists between them changes everything you think you know about Iran. From a distance, Iran is often reduced to a single image, defined by headlines, because Iran doesn't behave like a single place. A country where desert cities learn to cool air without machines, where poetry is still consulted like guidance, where ancient and modern life exist side by side. This is the Iran you only see when you look closer, but to understand it, you have to step into the land itself. Here, geography doesn't sit in the background. It decides everything. Cities exist because they adapted. Survival became design. And once you see that, the story changes. To understand Iran, you start with the land. And once you do, the image begins to break. The country of opposites, Iran doesn't feel like one country. It feels like several, forced into the same borders. In the southeast lies the Lut Desert, one of the hottest places ever measured on Earth. Satellite readings have recorded ground temperatures above 70 degrees Celsius. The land here seems stripped of comfort. Ridges of compacted earth stretch into the distance. Heat shimmers above the ground. The horizon looks brittle. It does not invite settlement. It challenges the idea of it. And yet that is only one face of Iran. Move north, toward the Caspian Sea, and the country changes so completely. It can feel like crossing into another climatic world. Moist air rises from the water and hits the Alborz Mountains. Rain falls, humidity gathers, vegetation thickens. The Hyrcanian forests spread across the northern slopes like a memory from another geological age. These ecosystems have survived for millions of years. Some trees rise high enough to pull the eye upward before the forest floor is even visible. Light does not flood these spaces. It filters through them. The air feels heavier, the ground darker, the silence denser. The contrast is so extreme that it can seem almost impossible. Burning desert in one direction, ancient rainforest in another. Both real, both Iran. This is not scenery, it is structure. It determines where towns rise, how food is grown, how architecture behaves, how daily life organizes itself. In some countries, geography frames human life. In Iran, it directs it. The desert does not cancel the forest. The mountains do not cancel the plateau. They all coexist, but landscapes are only the surface. The real story begins when people try to survive them, because what they built here should not exist. The city that learned to outsmart heat. In central Iran, survival often became architecture. No city makes that clearer than Yazd. Yazd sits between two deserts. Rain is scarce. Summers are punishing. Dust moves across open ground. The climate does not offer forgiveness, and yet the city has endured for more than 3,000 years. Not because the environment became easy, because people learned how to read it. Below the surface, qanats carried water across long distances from mountain aquifers to settlements and fields. These were underground channels, carefully graded so that water could flow by gravity alone. No pumps, no engines, no modern machinery, just precision. Where surface water disappears into heat, the solution was simple. Move below it. What appears hostile from the outside often produces remarkable intelligence from within. Yazd continues that logic above ground. Its buildings are made of adobe, the same earth-toned material that visually ties the city to the desert around it. Thick walls absorb heat during the day and release it slowly at night. Narrow lanes create shade. The city's layout reduces direct exposure to the sun. And then there are the wind towers, badgers, tall, quiet structures rising above rooftops like vertical instruments. They catch air at height and guide it downward into the rooms below. Hot air escapes. Cooler air circulates. Temperature drops. No moving parts. No electricity. No dramatic display. Only a long inheritance of climate knowledge turned into form. Step inside one of these buildings in the middle of summer, and the difference is immediate. Outside, the air burns. Inside, it slows. Not cold, but livable. And that was enough. This is why older Iranian architecture feels different. It is not merely visual. It is responsive. It listens. The city does not fight the environment. It works with it. That same intelligence appears again in Kashan. At first glance, Kashan can seem almost reserved. Exterior walls are plain. Roof lines sit low. The palette is muted. Nothing from the street announces luxury. Then a door opens, and suddenly everything changes. A courtyard appears. Water runs quietly through channels. Trees create shade. Light softens against plaster and tile. The temperature drops before the eye has fully adjusted. Traditional houses like the Tabatabaye house and Borajerdi house reveal something essential about Iranian design. Beauty here is not always displayed outward. Often it is protected inward. These residences were not built to impress the street. They were built to create balance. Ventilation, privacy, shade, proportion, acoustics, temperature. All of it is being managed at once. The result feels elegant, but that elegance begins as function. Even the Sultan Amir Ahmad bathhouse reflects the same logic. From above, its domes create a patterned roofscape over the old city. Inside, light enters through carefully shaped openings that soften brightness without inviting excessive heat. Curved surfaces, moderated air, and filtered illumination turn a practical building into an atmosphere. It takes necessity and refuses to leave it at necessity. It refines it. Then there is the Fin Garden. Here, in the edge world between city and desert, water moves through geometric channels. Trees cast deep shade. Space becomes ordered. Temperature changes. Noise falls away. In many parts of the world, a garden is decoration. In much of Iran, especially in arid environments, a garden is argument. It says that climate can be answered, that harshness can be shaped, that refuge can be designed, and beneath that design lies a deeper cultural logic. The Persian garden is not random greenery. It is organized relief, an enclosed world of shade, water, and proportion created against a harsher outside. In other words, it is not just beauty, it is worldview. The desert did not force Iranian cities into ugliness. Often it forced them into precision. But survival is only the beginning, because once the environment was understood, something else happened. Control, design, power made visible, and nowhere does that appear more clearly than in Isfahan. The city built to project order at its height, Isfahan was one of the great cities of the early modern world. At the center lies Naqsh-e Jahan Square, vast, geometric, controlled, one of the largest public squares ever constructed. But its significance is not only scale, it is composition. This was not empty monumentality. It was a statement about how a city and an empire should organize reality. Royal power, religious authority, commercial life, all gathered into one deliberate frame. That wasn't decoration, it was power, made visible. On the southern side rises the Shah Mosque, where the entrance turns before opening into the main prayer space, preserving the square's symmetry while aligning the mosque correctly, because it reveals the intelligence beneath the beauty. The structure does not simply decorate the square, it negotiates geometry. And when light falls across its tile work, the building does not seem to wear color so much as generate it. Cobalt, turquoise, pattern repeated until repetition itself becomes atmosphere. Then there is the Sheikh Lotfullah Mosque, smaller, more intimate, less public. It does not dominate through scale, it holds attention through refinement. Here, grandeur and subtlety are not opposites. They can live side by side. On the western side of the square, Ali Kapu Palace overlooks the space from above. To the north, the Grand Bazaar extends the square into the wider commercial life of the city. That is what makes Isfahan feel complete. It does not separate ceremony from daily life. It integrates them. Power did not stand outside the city. It was built into its center. But Isfahan's intelligence does not end at the square. The city reaches across the Zayande River through bridges like Sio Sepol and Kaju Bridge, structures that do more than carry movement from one side to another. They gather people. They create pause. Voices echo beneath their arches. Water, when present, becomes sound as much as image. These bridges do not behave like simple infrastructure. They become social architecture. Many of its most enduring spaces were built not only to function, but to host life. This is also where the modern tension enters. The Zayande River, which once defined Isfahan's identity so strongly, has run dry for extended periods in recent decades. Bridges that once carried water now stand over empty ground. And that changes more than they view. It changes memory. People still gather there, still walk, still return. But they do so with the awareness that the city's historic balance is under strain. Because Iran is not simply a preserved masterpiece. It is a living place under modern pressures. And Isfahan shows both truths at once: the country's ability to build beauty and the contemporary stress placed upon it. But not every city in Iran was built to impress. Some were built to feel, and that's where the story changes. Not power, not scale. Something softer, more inward, more human. This is Shiraz, the city that still speaks in poetry. Shiraz has long been associated with gardens, reflection, and verse. If Isfahan feels composed for ceremony, Shiraz feels composed for contemplation. The city sits within a valley shaped by the Zagros Mountains, where local conditions moderate heat and help sustain a milder environment than much of the surrounding plateau. It changes how the city is felt. It is not. In dry landscapes, scent disappears quickly into heat. In Shiraz, it lingers. The city's long association with roses, gardens, and cultivated calm begins there. But Shiraz is not important only because it is beautiful. It matters because culture here is still active, not archived. This is the city of Hafiz and Sadi. And in Shiraz, poetry is not sealed away as a school subject. It remains part of emotional life. At the tomb of Hafiz, people still open his collected verses at random, searching for guidance in lines written centuries ago. It means literature here is not simply admired. It is consulted. The text is not treated as dead inheritance. It is treated as living conversation. Continuity here is not just history. It is personal. The same feeling appears in the city's gardens, where water, path, geometry, and shade create spaces designed not for speed, but for pause. And then there is the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque. From outside, it can seem relatively restrained. Arches, tile work, symmetry. Then morning arrives. Sunlight moves through stained glass and spills color across the prayer hall floor. Red, blue, gold, green. The carpets beneath become part of the illumination. The walls receive movement instead of simply holding it. For a brief window each day, the building stops feeling fixed. It becomes an event. For a moment, the building stops being architecture. It becomes experience. This is one way to understand Iran. Some of its greatest spaces are not static achievements. They depend on time, on light, on use, on recurrence. Beauty here often unfolds rather than announces itself all at once, and Shiraz deepens that pattern. Its atmosphere is not only architectural, it is interpretive. People come here not just to see monuments, but to experience a relationship between memory, language, and place. That relationship is not sentimental, it is structured. Gardens create calm, poetry creates reflection, light creates wonder, the city creates tempo. Iran is often imagined from the outside as a place of severity. Shiraz breaks that assumption. It reveals a country where gentleness, refinement, and intellectual intimacy are also central parts of the cultural landscape. But Shiraz is not the end of the story, because just beyond it, the timeline shifts. Far back, before the cities most people know, to a place where Iran still speaks in the language of empire. The stone memory of empire beyond Shiraz rises Persepolis. More than 2,500 years old, it served as the ceremonial center of the Achaemenid Empire. Even in partial ruin, it does not feel diminished. It feels suspended in time. Broad stairways lead upward to a stone platform built not for defense but for presence. Columns rise in fragments, yet still hold the memory of volume. Even broken, it feels complete. Relief carvings line the walls with a precision that has outlasted dynasties, invasions, and centuries of erosion. What makes Persepolis remarkable is not only scale, it is its message. Across its stone surfaces, delegations from many parts of the empire appear bringing tribute. Different dress, different faces, different animals, different objects, because the reliefs do not present a vision of one flattened people. They present an imperial order large enough to absorb difference. This is not decoration, it is political thought, carved in stone. And once you see that, Persepolis is no longer just ruins. It is a message. And nearby, Naqsh-e extends that message into the cliff face, where royal tombs are carved high into the rock itself. Authority is lifted above ordinary ground, made visible from a distance, meant to endure after the body is gone. Longer before its later cities and gardens, this land had already built a civilization of scale, precision, and power. Persepolis does more than prove age. It proves that Iran has been shaping large civilizational systems for a very long time. And still, even here, the story is not static. The ruins remain, but they remain under pressure. Weathering, pollution, time itself. Because it reminds us that Iran's historical greatness is not safely sealed behind museum glass. It exists in a living environment. Still exposed, still vulnerable, still part of the present. But this is not where the story ends, because Iran is not only memory, it is continuity, and that becomes visible somewhere very different. In a city where desert intelligence, religious continuity, and coexistence meet in the same streets. This is Yazd again, but now from another angle. The flame that never went out. Yazd is not just a desert city engineered for survival. It is also one of the historic centers of Zoroastrianism. At the fire temple in Yazd, a sacred flame has been preserved continuously for centuries. The fire is not treated as decoration. It is something that must not go out. Tended, protected, carried across generations. Iran is often described as if its story begins in the modern era, but Yazd refuses that reduction. They remind you that this land held deep traditions long before modern states defined it. Those traditions did not vanish. They persisted, not untouched, not unchanged, but present. A country where identities do not always erase one another. Sometimes they endure in parallel. Sometimes they learn to share space. That is why Yazd matters. It is not only a triumph of environmental adaptation. It is a visible example of continuity surviving pressure. The desert did not erase the city. Time did not erase the flame. Political transformation did not erase memory. Instead, survival accumulated. And yet, if you stopped here, you could still make another mistake. You could still imagine Iran as a place whose real life belongs mostly to older cities, older beliefs, older architecture. But Iran is not frozen there, because the next correction is not ancient. It is modern, and it changes everything again. The capital of contradictions. Tehran does not reveal itself gently. It spreads across the southern slope of the Alborz Mountains in a cast urban field of traffic, towers, older neighborhoods, government buildings, and parks still trying to hold space inside the metropolitan rush. With more than 15 million people in its wider urban system, Tehran is one of the largest cities in the Middle East. It is where simple explanations stop working. The city is shaped by altitude as much as by planning. In the north, streets climb toward cooler air and greener districts near the foothills. In the south, density thickens and industrial pressure becomes more visible. Temperature changes by elevation, air changes, pace changes. Tehran is not flat, not geographically, not socially, not psychologically. A short drive can feel like crossing into another world. Modern expressways cut through old neighborhoods. Towers rise beside markets that still pulse with older rhythms. Digital life is everywhere. So is continuity, because daily life keeps intruding. People commute, work, study, argue, wait in traffic, drink tea, meet friends in parks. Move through routines that are familiar in human terms, even when the broader political frame around them is unfamiliar to outsiders. At the Grand Bazaar, trade still moves through spaces that have organized exchange for generations. At Golestan Palace, mirror mosaics scatter light across interiors with almost impossible intricacy. And outside those historic spaces, the city continues in the practical arithmetic of rent, inflation, time, aspiration, and endurance. Nothing here is simple, and that's exactly the point. It does not replace the historic Iran. It layers over it. That is different. Tehran is not a break from the rest of the country. It is an accumulation of it. Old and new. Pressure and ambition. Structure and improvisation. Traffic itself becomes a kind of urban metaphor. From a distance, it can look chaotic. Up close, it reveals constant negotiation, adjustment, timing, gesture, anticipation. It is not a city of perfect order. It is a city of continuous adaptation. And under that adaptation lies something familiar across Iran: persistence. But Tehran is not the final answer, because the real correction is simpler. It happens in daily life. The Iran that distance erases. The most misunderstood countries are often the ones people think they already understand. That is what happens when headlines harden into identity, because the image is loud, but daily life is quiet. Morning begins in familiar ways. Bakeries open early. Flatbread is prepared in ovens that have been used for years, sometimes decades. Tea appears constantly through the day, in homes, offices, shops, and conversations that keep extending beyond their original purpose. Public space remains active. Families gather in parks. People walk in the evening. Children move through open areas with a looseness that belongs less to formal programming than to habit and repetition. Conversations stretch. Hospitality appears quickly. A guest is seated, tea arrives. Food expands beyond necessity, not because they are exotic, because they are human, not the state, not the symbolic architecture, the human tempo. Economic strain is real. Inflation affects ordinary decisions. Sanctions shape access, trade, and household calculations. The pressure is not abstract, but life does not stop. It adjusts. Merchants change prices. Families recalculate spending. Young people move through life. Zero education, smartphones, music, while older structures of religion, family, and tradition remain visible around them. That coexistence defines the country, not uniformity, overlap. One generation carries certain habits forward. Another interprets them differently. Neither fully erases the other. The same is true of religion. Public expressions remain present. Mosques, rituals, and religious time continue to shape social reality, but individual experience varies widely. It contains multiple intensities at once: conservative and modern, historic and digital, structured and improvised, pressured and warm. That does not make it incoherent. It makes it real. And once that reality begins to come into focus, the final shift becomes unavoidable. Because the issue is no longer whether Iran is more complex than expected. It is that the picture was never complete. Beyond the headlines, Iran is often introduced as something simple. A country with one of the hottest places on Earth, and forests that feel prehistoric. Cities that learned how to move water underground and cool air without machines. Squares built to project power. Gardens built to create refuge. Poetry still treated as guidance. Ancient faith still visible in the modern landscape. A capital where aspiration, pressure, memory, and endurance all live in the same urban frame. This does not make Iran simple, but it makes it visible. The issue is not that the headlines are false. It is that they are narrow. They show one surface, sometimes an important one, but still only one. They do not show how geography organizes life, how architecture becomes intelligence, how continuity survives transformation, how ordinary daily routines quietly resist abstraction. Iran does not reveal itself all at once. It corrects you in stages, first through landscape, then through cities, then through memory, then through people, and each stage makes the earlier image feel less complete. A lesson in scale. Some places cannot be honestly understood through one lens alone. Iran is one of them. Up close, it feels alive, severe in some places, tender in others, ancient but not static, modern but not severed from its past. A country where continuity did not prevent change, and change never fully erased continuity. That is not a contradiction. It is the structure. And once you see it clearly, the idea of reducing it to a single headline stops making sense. This is Iran. This is Iran. This is... Yeah.